Hey, welcome everybody. Today's been one of those days. Anything that can go wrong did. So you got the a blank screen for 5 minutes? Good grief. Shouldn't have been that way. Or maybe I triggered it. Don't remember. It's been a crazy day today, as you can tell with the various emails that went out and whatnot. Let me get my light on here. Oh my. So, we'll be broadcasting here off, StreamYard via Facebook for the next 7 days. I got banned on YouTube. And at first I was really upset over it, but then I kind of realized why. I was talking to one of my friends just before the show started today, and I realized the particular video that got banned, I'm not going to mention what it is, that YouTube pulled, and that movie that just came out on child trafficking, that's probably what triggered it. That's all I'm going to say about that. And so it's I can kind of understand why that particular video over there got pulled. So anyway, this is how it is. So we're going to be broadcasting through here and TikTok and Twitch for this week. And then the videos that are made will be placed over YouTube next week. It'll be in the video file over there. But I want to welcome everybody, and hopefully everybody found us, because this all came to me last minute. I went to make adjustments on YouTube and all this stuff and got a notice from YouTube. So I was sending out links like a crazy woman trying to get everything set up. In fact, the other video that I had set up, that was supposed to, this part, that was supposed to run today, I went into StreamYard to just take YouTube off of it, and it took it all off of Facebook. So I had to set up a new video. Anyway, my name is Charlotte. I have a migraine. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state, which means if you have a ghost issue or you think you have a ghost issue, we can help you. It might take us a while to get to you, but we can help you. But we can help you. We do have mediums on staff that can call you and talk with you as well, because the state is such a big state, it's hard for us to get there. In some cases, it's hard for us to get there right away. So it might take us a couple days to get to you. So in the meantime, you can talk with one of our mediums, and then they can call, in a lot of cases, calm things down in the home or business, okay? Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. And we're broadcasting, like I said, on Facebook, Twitch, and TikTok today. If you try to find us on Facebook, you can just look us up under California Haunts. Twitch, we are Cal Haunts. Twitter, we're California Haunts. TikTok, we are California Haunts, all lowercase. You can also get me on Instagram and Threads, and that would be under Ghosty Gal. That's all lowercase. And you can get us at YouTube. I mean, there's still videos. All the other videos are over there, so it's not a big deal. You can check that out at youtube.com/@California Haunts Radio. So, yeah, there you have it. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad everybody's here. And hopefully we'll see, everybody makes the change. All my people over at Meetup, I emailed you guys, and, I did my bit on everywhere else where I tease the show, so hopefully everybody gets the memo today. My guest today has been on before, Dr. Bruce Goldberg, and we had a great conversation about, the last time he was on, about Nikola Tesla. And today we're going to have a conversation about Nikola Tesla. Again, we're going to be talking about some of his inventions. And we're also going to be talking about his death ray. And we're going to be talking about the machine he tried to create to speak to the dead, right? There's a lot of those machines out there. I'm going to give credit. Huff Paranormal has one that he works with. There's a lot of these companies that make these machines. In fact, I just downloaded for fun, because I don't usually use them in my house and stuff. But I just downloaded one on my cell phone that works pretty good. That really opened my eyes the other day. I mean, I was in here, and this is where I shoot all my shows. I mean, TikTok shorts and everything come out here. Just when I have to shoot like a product review or something, I shoot it over in my main video studio. And it was funny because whatever I was in contact with, probably one of my family members, actually told me, that the first message, and I'll tell you something about these apps real quick too. I don't, if they come up with one word, I tend to not believe it, because, you get the one word and you're like, oh, yeah, so-and-so could do this and bend this way. When they come up with a sentence, that's something all different to me. So I'm sitting here, and I was saying, was everybody here with me? There was no response. So I said, do you have a message for me? And the first thing that comes through this app was and my own video. So it's whoever it is watches me do the show, they're aware of the fact that I'm filming it here. So that was kind of cool. That was kind of cool. Anyway, I'm going to shut up now. And I'm going to bring Bruce in, Dr. Goldberg in, so we can get this started. I'm so fascinated by Tesla and the stuff he created. In fact, if you're watching, Robert, I used to date, when I was in junior high and high school, I dated a kid that was, well, you guys would call him a nerd, but he was one of these genius kids, right? And so he used to build stuff. He was like Tesla. He would come up with these ideas, build lasers, build different things. And so this is why Tesla appeals to me so much, in that I just love that. I love seeing people create stuff like that. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to bring Dr. Bruce in. Here we go.
Good evening.
Good evening. Let's see what else can go wrong today.
It's nice to reincarnate.
Yes. That was scary. I came in here, the screen was black. It's been that kind of day. How are you?
I am just fine. I love the weather. This is my favorite time of the year. And talking about Nikola Tesla is one of my favorite topics, especially about spirit contact.
Fantastic. Tell us about you, for the people that didn't see the show last time. Tell us about you, sir.
Tell us about, your voice trailed.
Okay, for the people that didn't watch the show last time or weren't here, because I have a lot more followers now, tell them about you.
Okay, well, I am an unusual person in the world. I have my undergraduate training is biochemistry. I have a dental degree and a master's in counseling psychology. And in the background, you can see my first book, Past Lives, Future Lives. I have devoted my life to using hypnosis for time travel, energy healing, taking people into past and future lives. My book was the first book ever written on taking people into future lives. I've evolved my practice to cover things like ET abductions, to out-of-body experiences, time travel from our future, and any connection with the fifth dimension, which is what we're going to be discussing tonight. Anytime you're dealing with spirits, poltergeists, whatever term you want to use, I call them ultra-terrestrials. Those are spirits that inhabit the fifth dimension. That is exactly what I do. So we're going to be discussing today Nikola Tesla and the kind of war that occurred between him and Edison regarding trying to find out who can contact the spirits. Spoiler alert, Tesla won.
So,
okay,
let me
define what we're talking about first, because remember, I'm a scientist. Yes, I'm a metaphysician, but I haven't forgotten my scientific training. So we're dealing with energy. So according to classic science, classic physics, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Once it exists, it's always going to exist in some form. Now, you can transform heat to electrical, to radiation, other forms of energy. But if you start out with 50 photons, you wind up with 50 photons. So we know that the living soul itself, the subconscious mind, as we say in therapy, is a form of energy. It's electromagnetic radiation, which is equivalent to this computer signal or a cell phone or a TV or a radio. It all works on electromagnetic radiation. So the key issue here is that if we have the soul as electromagnetic radiation and we have advanced technology, and by the way, even simple technology, as you'll see, so electronic instrumentation can and does make it possible to record the existence of poltergeists or souls, departed souls who have left the physical body and are inhabitants of the fifth dimension. Also, it can record any fifth dimensional inhabitant. It might be a time travel coming back in time. It could be an ET going through a wormhole in another galaxy. So any of these things are relevant to the idea of they're out there, and with the proper instrumentation, which we'll discuss, including simple instrumentation, you can actually contact that. So that's the basis of this. Now, getting back to the war between Edison and Tesla. By the way, Tesla did not start this war. This was due to Edison's megalomania and his insecurities. Back in the 1920s, Edison was brilliant. He had 1,100 patents. You know, he was the greatest inventor we've had in introducing the phonograph, motion picture camera, the light bulb, of course. So if he decided to just simply retire or just keep on with his company, everything would have been fine, except that he heard that Tesla was working on contacting spirits in the fifth dimension, or of the dead, so to speak, and therefore he couldn't stand the concept of Tesla doing something that he couldn't do. For example, Tesla developed alternating current. That's the current we use today. Edison had direct current, which basically sucks compared to alternating current. So he didn't like that. His ego could not allow that. So therefore, there was a competition. So basically, the friction between Edison and Tesla made one of the greatest rivalries about not just electricity, of course, but also about the spirit, what they call the spirit phone. Basically, that's what we're dealing with here, the war between those two. Now, remember, there's a difference in the way they did their science. Edison's very famous for his expression, genius is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. Tesla was the opposite. He would work out these details in his mind, not have to go through a million failed experiments, and then come up with a brilliant concept. For example, he developed alternating current in his mind before he even wrote it down. I still can't relate to that because alternating current is not a simple principle, right? These are very physical designs, etc. So that's the kind of person he was. So basically, how did this begin? Okay, so Edison was not interested in spirit communication at first. Tesla was the one who began this. So what happened was, in 1901, Tesla had a very terrifying experience, which got him into the whole field that we'll see eventually led to the EVP, or electronic voice phenomenon, which I'm sure you and your listeners or viewers are familiar with. So one night, he's in his little laboratory, and it's 1901, and he hears this. He's experimenting with a crystal radio. Remember, Tesla was the one who developed radio. I know when you were in school, you said Marconi developed radio. Marconi actually stole the design from Tesla. And in the 1960s, the Supreme Court gave the patent to Tesla's estate. So Tesla developed radio, not Marconi. So basically in 1901, Tesla was experimenting with this crystal radio powered by electromagnetic waves. The signals he picked up one night were so unnerving. In his scientific mind, he couldn't help think that this must be from ghosts. He didn't know what was going on. So he wrote in his diary, and I'm going to quote, "My first observations positively terrified me, as there was present in them something mysterious, not to say supernatural, and I was alone in my lab at night." So basically, it scared the kazooties out of him. So he didn't know what was going on. Well, being the scientist that he is, or was, he decided to develop some sort of equipment to register this, to be able to get more communication. And the goal here was to develop a spirit phone, which would allow a two-way communication with these spirits or these ultra-terrestrials. And that was where the race began. Back and forth, we're going into a number of years back and forth. Nothing is really happening. When Edison learned that Tesla, through his inventions, might get in touch with another dimension before he did, he said, you know, no way, okay? I'm not going to let this guy beat me again, because everybody knew about the war with the electric currents and AC versus DC. So basically, Edison decided to take the bull by the horns, and he decided to create what he called the spirit phone. So what happened was, Edison used from his work some of the work of Einstein, etc. Remember, this is 1920 now. Einstein already had the special and general relativity principles that were already established in scientific articles. So Edison was thinking was that if it's possible to convert mass to energy, which it is, then it might be possible for spirits of living people to become units of energy with their bodies. And when they stop working and they clinically die, that the entangled particles can affect each other at great distances, which is what quantum physics would say, the non-local approach of quantum physics. All right, so what happened was that Edison decided to have his prototype spirit phone to test it in 1920. So he set up he invited a bunch of mediums and scientists and a whole bunch of people to observe his experiment, getting a lot of publicity. Remember, Edison was, he was like the Elon Musk of his time. Not quite. Right. That was Tesla. Okay. So what happens is he has this event, almost like the spiritualist meeting, like a seance kind of thing, which is very popular in those days. So he has this projector-like machine set out on a workbench that emitted a thin beam of light onto a photoelectric cell. The cell was to detect the presence of forces onto the beam, even those invisible to the naked eye. All right, sound good? If a being from another world were to attend the gathering and pass through the light, a meter hooked up to the photoelectric cell would let them know that they're there, and Edison would be a superstar. All right, his guests stayed there for hours. Hours passed. The needle on the meter remained still. Even the mediums in attendance had to admit that nothing supernatural was going on. So these were psychics that were, using their abilities to evaluate the room in which they were in, to see if there were any ghosts or any spirits. And the answer was none, zero. So he continued working on his spirit phone throughout the 1920s and failed miserably. He died in 1931 without ever producing any evidence of the spirit phone working or any evidence of spirits through his research. But that's his research. So now we're going to go to the dude, good old Nikola Tesla. So what Tesla did was he used his techniques to evaluate or to listen to spirits from the other side. Now, he was not able so quickly to talk to them and have a two-way communication, granted, but he was able to develop his radios and his other devices that picked up the signals from these departed spirits, these souls, which, by the way, even mediums acknowledge that. So he was, they said, yeah, this soul's present, and his meters and his little devices were able to pick it up. Now, what happened was that a group of researchers claimed that that during the seances that had in 1941, this is 10 years after Edison's death, that Edison's plans would actually work and that they were trying to support Edison's reputation. But of course, they failed miserably because it didn't work. Edison lost again, even in death, he lost to Tesla. Okay, so basically, the mysterious signals that Tesla received could be linked to what we know today as EVP, or electronic voice phenomena. Tesla was the first man to experiment with this. Remember, we're talking about 1901, and then more significantly through the 1920s. So that was before anybody else was doing EVP, right? So he was the man. Again, like everything else in life, he was the forerunner. So electronic voice phenomena basically means that the spirits from the other side are energy, electromagnetic radiation, and they can broadcast their presence and their communication. So, for example, if you have radios, tape recorders, VCRs, televisions, telephones, even computers, you can technically receive signals from spirits from the other side. There are stories that you could hear about, like somebody sitting at home watching television, and maybe their grandmother died a couple of weeks before, and all of a sudden the image of the grandmother appears on the TV set. Or people will get a telephone call from somebody who died recently, or even a few years ago. Now, those are not just Twilight Zone episodes, they actually occur. And those are spirits communications. Because television signals, radio, and telephones are all electromagnetic radiation. And since the soul is electromagnetic radiation, well, it's the same signal. It's the same, at least type of energy anyway. So basically, what I'm saying is that if you take your phone and you put it on audio to record, or have a tape recorder or a cassette player or whatever you've got, any kind of recorder, and you go to a cemetery and you don't make any other noises, you just walk around the cemetery, especially at night, and then you go home and you play back your recording, don't be surprised if you get voices. Help me, I was murdered, Or you could do even just walking along your streets of your neighborhood. Okay, there are spirits that are floating around the fifth dimension, ultra-terrestrials, and they don't know what to do. Usually souls go where they die. So if a person dies in bed in a hotel room or in their home or in the hospital. The soul will kind of hang around there for a while because that's their reference point. They feel familiar with that. And that's a good place for anyone without any special equipment, just a simple recorder. You don't have to go crazy here with some, paranormal device, just a regular recorder, and that would record these voices. Now, the field has gotten a lot more scientific since testing, in the sense that there are devices, which I will describe in detail, that have been created that you could actually buy on Amazon to help you with these meters. And we'll go into that. But let me just cover some of the other basic stuff. So basically, this goes back to the early days of radio research. Remember, Tesla was doing, he invented the radio communication. Marconi was, of course, kind of a groupie, kind of like an intern, and actually stole his technology. So they were both working on it, and others were too. But let me go back. Let me fast forward a few years after the 1920s, 30s, and even 40s. We're going to go back to the year 1952. On September 15th of 1952, two Catholic priests, a Father Ernetti and a Father Gamilli, were collaborating on a musical research project. Ernetti was an internationally respected scientist, physicist, philosopher, and music lover, and Gamilli was the president of the Papal Academy. So these are not creepy guys. These are guys with excellent credibility and reputation. So what happened was they were trying to record a Gregorian chant, but a wire in their equipment kept breaking, and Gamilli looked up and asked his dead father for help. He was praying. Remember, this guy's a priest, right? So to his amazement, his father's voice was heard saying, "Of course I shall help you. I'm always with you." Then he said, "But zucchini," he called him zucchini, right? Let's see why that's relevant. "It is clear, don't you know it?" Now, Gamilli was astonished because zucchini was his childhood nickname that only his father would tell him. In other words, he didn't share that with any of his fellow priests, the Vatican, Ornetti, or anybody else. So how would anybody know to call him zucchini, right? It wasn't a fruit stand, okay, or vegetable stand. So this was an example that he realized that he was speaking to his departed father. So Gamilli told the Pope about this experience. Now it gets heavy here. And to his surprise, he was assured that, to be rest assured, we're not going to imprison you because of this. So the Pope Pius told Gamilli, "You really need not to worry about this, that the existence of the voice is strictly a scientific fact." And in other words, he was supporting him. He was, and using science, which is not the usual element of the papacy. So he was getting support for that. The electronic voice phenomena was next researched by two men from California, the medium Attila von Sasley and a paranormal researcher named Raymond Bayless. Now, Bayless is very well written in scientific literature. In 1956, they recorded, by chance, a series of paranormal voices on magnetic tape, voices that should not have been there. Again, EVP again, right? Bayless reported their experiments in the journal, the American Society of Psychical Research, a very well-respected journal. And like Tesla years before, not a single person contacted the society or research to inquire about their work. So in other words, there was like a kibosh put on this. People didn't want to deal with this. I don't know why, but they didn't. So it wasn't until 1959 when Frederick Jurgensen, a film producer in Sweden, first made public his amazing voice recordings, that then the world took notice about the EVP phenomenon. So that was really the beginning of the popular exposure to the EVP phenomenon. Jurgensen, while making a documentary, had decided to try to tape bird songs, and when he played the tape back, he was startled to hear, among the tweeting and chirping, what sounded like his mother's voice saying in German, "Friedrich, you are being watched. Friedrich, my little Friedel, can you hear me?" Okay. So that got him, years later, he was convinced that it was the same sound of his mother's voice. He obviously recognized it. And again, they're speaking to them using the kind of terminology that they would when they were children, they were young adults, as they was with Ernetti and Gamilli. So basically, electromagnetic waves are what we're dealing with, electromagnetic radiation. They are, we know that they can be recorded. That's what you record a DVR, you listen to the radio, you record anything from electronic media, you're recording electromagnetic radiation. So basically, this is what the basis of what we call the electronic voice phenomenon, or EVP. Now, there are two prominent ways in which the supernatural, and when I say that, I mean fifth dimensional entities, okay, is connected to electronics. First, there is a connection between electromagnetism and ghosts. And I'll use that term. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Ghost hunters claim that ghosts create electromagnetic radiation or consist of electromagnetic energy, which is what I believe, of course. Repeated claims have been made all over the place about this. So the second direct connection between electronic devices and the supernatural is a form of electronic voice phenomena, which occurs when individuals claim that the supernatural entities, especially spirits and the departed, communicate through static electronic devices, such as any kind of recording. So that's basically the basis of what we call EVP, or electronic voice phenomena. So again, the nice thing about this is that it's studied. There are many scientists and articles on this. The parapsychologist Konstantin Radov, he died in 1974 in Russia, popularized it in the 1970s. And again, the beat goes on. So now we've had a lot of, there are conferences with EVP. There's a lot of scientists involved. There are workshops, books, seminars, you name it. The EVP phenomena is very important because what it does clinically, and this is where my clinical background in this comes in, it helps people with bereavement. Because if you communicate with the lost soul of your grandmother, children, whatever it is, then you realize that there's no such thing as death. It's simply a change of dimensions. You go from the earth plane, physical plane, to the astral plane, as an example. And therefore, it has a clinical basis and a clinical application, which, of course, me as a therapist, this is what I enjoy the most, that aspect of it. So this is where EVP becomes very, very important, and it becomes something that is clinically beneficial and something that, that's what we're studying here. So when you hear about a ghost, a poltergeist, or a departed entity, whatever, in the fifth dimension, the ultra-terrestrial, as I call it, it's real. And the dimensions are real. They have real things that occur. Their physical laws are different. They don't have the physical laws we have. But these are real entities, and people, when they go to sleep at night, they go out of the body every single night, go into a REM cycle, rapid eye movement cycle, where your eyes go back and forth and measure them closed, and they're in the fifth dimension. The question is, where do you go? You want to go to the upper astral plane, not to the lower astral plane. So that's the basis of the science, anyway, of the EVP phenomenon.
Absolutely fascinating. And it interests me because, I mean, they didn't have the technology that they have now to build this stuff. So it fascinates me to think that he was even able to try to create this machine, to communicate.
You see, I think this goes into a universal law, basically. And when you think of it, mankind, we have a lot of inventions, look at the light bulb, cars, satellites, cell phones, etc. We're supposed to develop this. This is not just an accident. If it was, then why didn't the ancient Greeks develop it? They had some of the greatest minds in history. Archimedes, Hieron from Rome, 1st century AD, developed a steam engine 2,000 years ago, okay? The Roman government arrogantly decided not to do anything about it. But so we had brilliant minds in antiquity. So why didn't they come up with this? Because timing wasn't right, and there were a lot of other factors. So my point is that we're developing the electronic voice phenomena and contact with spirits on the other side as a way therapeutically of getting people to get over the fear of death. That is the #1 fear in America and the world. People, we call this thanatology. It's the fear of death. That's what freaks people out and gets people depressed, which is what bereavement is, a form of depression. So I don't think this was an accident. I think this was given to us as a way of helping us grow spiritually. Just like technologically, we do a whole bunch of things to make our life easier. And that's great. But spiritually, there seems to be a lot of gaps in spirituality. We have technology, that's great. But a lot of spirituality gaps are present today. And that's why people are so angry and so dysfunctional, drug addiction, you name it, everything in the world, gambling, you name it, everything in the world, every degenerate behavior, because they're not happy. When people are happy campers, they don't deal with things like that. So the idea of spiritual growth and the idea of elimination of the fear of death and demonstrating it scientifically to get the skeptics to lighten up a little bit, although that's not an easy thing to do, as I'm sure you know. Right. But this is a way of helping us grow spiritually. So I think this is very important. Now, the field of electronics has given us certain detectors and certain toys, as I call them, such as psychoenergy detectors, ion detectors, magnetic field oscillator detectors, electronic charge detectors, etc. And there's a device which I'm sure you're going to like. It's called the ghost meter.
Yes.
This is called the ghost detector, which contains a circuit that can detect oscillations in the magnetic field. So if there is a poltergeist present, and they will alter the magnetic field of the room in which you're in, and that meter will detect it. So that's called the ghost meter. Now, there's also what we call the EMF meter, electromagnetic interference, EMI, and they also call the EMF. And you can buy those on Amazon, okay? I mean, Amazon sells EMF meters, okay? So you see how commercial and how these things are done. These meters are calibrated, etc. And they're very, very, very good, and they have an excellent reputation. So, so the idea of EVP, people can laugh at it and say, "Oh, this is whatever. You're making this up." No, we're not. This is science. I'm a scientist, and you read some of these very technical articles and experiences, and some of the tapes that are done. These are real experiences, and again, it just shows you how we can detect the element on the other side. Now, the problem with this is that a lot of these voices are recorded from entities on the lower astral plane. So they're panicking. A lot of the times it's like, help me, I'm in trouble here. How can I get out of here? So that's the lower astral plane. Now, some of the ones I quoted already, those were from the upper astral plane because they were very, very complimentary or very, talking to their son, etc., in a very nice, calm demeanor. That means they're on the upper astral plane. But most of the evidence that I've seen are basically panic attack times. They're in a bad neighborhood where they're being attacked by entities 24/7. These are weird, creepy, like every horror movie you've ever seen: vampires, trolls, Dracula, werewolves. All these are lower astral entities. That's where they get them from. So if you're surrounded by a noisy environment with all kinds of negative entities attacking you 24 hours a day, you're not going to be a happy camper.
Absolutely. Now, I have a question. When we talk about these entities on the lower planes, are those the ones that, because I'm the one that does EVPs on processing on my team, are the enemies on the lower planes, or not the enemies, but the entities, the entities on the lower planes, the ones that are in the lowest frequencies?
Well, yeah, they are permanent residents. So let me explain what I mean.
Okay.
There are entities on the lower astral plane. That's the origin of psychic attack. Okay. And you see, there's no such thing as bad luck. People say, "Oh, I have bad luck. I got into a car accident. I got tricked, all that kind of stuff." No, that's garbage. It's energy. Energy is either positive or negative, just like ions in the atmosphere. You have positive ions and you have negative ions. You don't have neutral ions. So these lower astral entities have been around since the universe began. So we're talking 13.7 billion years ago. They can read your mind, so that's why they can play games with you if you allow them. They hate humankind. They want to wipe us off the face of the earth. They can't. All they can do is create anxiety and fear. That's what their world is all about. Now, the astral plane is a very emotional dimension. Even the upper astral plane is very emotional. And so when these entities, they can consist of extraterrestrials from some galaxies. They can hang out there. Some of them are permanent residents. You've got weird creatures. You've got just nasty entities that really do not mean you well. They're jealous of us because, remember, they're in a terrible environment. They're in a bad neighborhood. They would love to be on the earth. Even though there are bad neighborhoods on this planet and this dimension, but we don't have people attacking you 24/7 with no physical law, so they can send rays out to you and do all kinds of creepy things. No, they are jealous. They want to get the hell out of there, but they can't. They're permanent residents and they're trapped. So basically, they take out their frustrations on us if you allow them. And that's why I use psychic protection with all the patients I work with. Now, what's interesting about Tesla, there's something about Tesla that is, Tesla was the most brilliant mind in the last 150 years. In fact, the only person I would give credit to being smarter than Tesla would be Da Vinci. Da Vinci is recognized as the greatest mind in history. So there's a cute little aside that I want to teach you something about Tesla's laws here. So back in the early 1950s, Einstein was near the end of his life. He died in 1955. And he was in New Jersey in Princeton University, of course. And a magazine reporter was doing an article on him. You know, one of those like spreads, you know, like a feature article. Everybody did that with Einstein. So Einstein was in his office, and the reporter was there. And the reporter, of course, was well read on Einstein's theories. And the reporter asked him, and kind of like an aside, he said, "Professor Einstein, what's it like to be the smartest man in the world?" So Einstein, in a fit of rare humility, said, "I don't know. Why don't you ask Tesla?"
That's great.
Now, here's what Tesla was very familiar with the secrets of the universe, but that's where he gets his inventions from. So he said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, you need to understand three things. Number one, energy. Number two, frequency. Number three, vibration. And he's right. That's the secret of the universe. So in my practice, my hypnotherapy practice here in LA, I deal with the soul's energy, electromagnetic radiation. I deal with training people to access their higher self, to raise the frequency of their soul and their frequency vibrational rate. So I'm applying Tesla's principle in my own practice towards having people use the secrets of the universe to empower themselves and to overcome issues and to be all they can be. Because I don't do the therapy, their higher self does by using these principles. I'm just getting the parties together. So again, using these principles of Tesla. By the way, there's also an interesting study I read. 85% of all the inventions that have been made in the last 120 years are due to Tesla's research. 85% of everything that we know today comes from Nikola Tesla. That's why the car is named after him, okay?
That's incredible. That's incredible. So when we talk about this machine that he was trying to build, what were the first? What were those first initial steps to him building it?
What were the first steps of the EVP? Is that what you're saying? Your voice kind of
the stuff for him to be, for him to start creating this machine. Did he draw the plans at first, or did he just start fiddling around with stuff, or how did it work?
Okay, so remember, Tesla had a different philosophy about life, contrary, the opposite of Edison. Tesla believed in developing efficient ways of patenting something, whatever he was dealing with, right? And of course, most of his work deal with electricity, electromagnetic radiation, electricity research, right? Okay, so in other words, in his mind, this is how brilliant this guy was. In his mind, he would say, okay, here is a project I want to do. I want to create something, some device. I want to patent something that will benefit mankind. Remember, he patented a free energy device in Colorado in like 1903, right? And so at the time, it was, I think, Westinghouse was his sponsor at the time. Well, it may have been J.P. Morgan, one of the two. And they said, look what I've done. And so what the idiot robber baron said, hey, that's okay, as long as I have the meter, okay? They didn't like free energy because it conflicted against their business. Okay, so basically, what Edison would do is he would say, okay, I want to develop something, something with his electricity, whatever. And then he would, in his mind, compute and do his experiments in his mind, not like Edison doing 10,000 failures to develop the light bulb. And then when he came up with a solution, then he would go to his lab and then he would work it out. And then he would create whatever the device was. So he was very efficient. Again, he understood the secrets of the universe. And I think he was getting telepathic communication from some of the more advanced entities around the fifth dimension that was helping him, not to delegate or derogate his brilliant mind, but I think he was getting a lot of help, which is fine. That's the way we do things. I've developed my superconscious mind tapping, my progression therapy, by going to the upper astral plane and to the museum there and getting the information where Tesla went there, Einstein, Newton, everybody goes there, okay? It's the museum of the future, as I call it. So there's nothing wrong with that, but he was so cool because he did it with efficiency. He didn't have to waste a lot of time. Edison wasted a lot of time, and he had a lot of people working for him to do the grunt work, whereas Tesla did all by himself.
That's why I was going to ask you, when you said earlier, we have been given this information. By whom?
Yeah. Let me tell you something that Tesla did that this was a bit of a problem, but not purposely done. So basically, in 1908, we're going back in time now. In 1908, there was a gentleman, an Admiral Perry. He was investigating or trying to go to the North Pole. Okay, so 1908 was kind of a bad year for Tesla because his sponsors, in this case it was J.P. Morgan, refused to give him any more money. So he was broke. Okay, his research was very expensive. He built his big towers on Long Island. If you look at his research, you know, so he was broke, and he decided he needed to do something really extreme, that the world would pay attention to him, that he would be able to now get sponsors for his research. All right. So what happened was he knew about Admiral Perry going to the North Pole. So what he decided, he communicated with him, and he said, look, he said, Admiral Robert Perry was the gentleman. He said, look, I'm going to help you discover the North Pole by sending you a big light show right when you're by this island called Lake Ellesmere. It's an island that's right by the North Pole, at least when you look at it geographically. And I want you to look out for it. It's going to be a brilliant light show, and it's going to allow you to see where this island is and to, you know, negotiate where you are, because it gets very dark. There's no sun for 6 months a year in the North Pole, right? So, so Admiral Perry said, okay, whatever, you know, what is he going to say? He doesn't know what he's doing. So Tesla developed a brilliant device. It was a major electrical generator that would send out this big beam all the way to the North Pole. Now, he's in Long Island. Tesla was in Long Island, his lab. And he has this, he called it the Tesla gun. Later, it would be known as the Tesla death ray. So let me tell you what happened. So on the night of August, well, in 1908, this was June 30th, 1908, he gets his gun ready, gets his you know, Tesla gun ready, pumps it up, you know. Now, he doesn't understand what's going to happen here, because it's going to be a humongous amount of energy that he's never created before. So he's got no research to back him up, right? It's going to be like, let's see what happens, which is not always the greatest response of science. So what he does is he sends this beam out. Not only does it go to the North Pole, which lights it up and allows Admiral Perry to have a nice, easy, you know, visit to the North Pole, but it overshoots the mark. Now, remember, the Earth is a globe. So what happened is it overshot the mark. And if you look at a globe, it went beyond the North Pole into Tokumska, Siberia in Russia. Okay, this is before the Soviet Union in 1908. And it caused a major catastrophe there. It was, people thought it was a nuclear, well, they didn't know what nuclear explosions were. The people today would think it was a nuclear explosion. It wasn't. It was the death ray or the Tesla gun. It caused, it was an unbelievable weapon, which, let me give you some examples of this. It gave you, it flattened 80 million trees across 800 square miles. Every plant, animal, and even insects were vaporized. That's why people thought today it was a nuclear explosion. Wow. The shockwaves was felt as far away as England. Remember, this is Siberia, okay? Right. Right? The scientists assumed it was a comet impact like the one that ended the dinosaurs, except there was no crater. There was no, you know, there was no visible signs of anything other than some weird form of energy. That energy came from Tesla's gun, or what we call the death ray. So that shows you an example of how powerful this device was. And so again, all based on electricity, and all the arguments trying to assume that scientists assume that the Tokumska event was caused by a natural gas explosion, or nuclear detonation. That's impossible. Or extraterrestrial spacecrafts. Remember, the atom bomb was developed until 1945, okay, by America. So all the typical explanations are incorrect and don't stand any kind of efficacy. And they don't like to admit it. They don't like to deal with it. But this is the basis of his death rate. The fireball that created by this would be 30 times brighter than the sun. It would heat the air. It would be equivalent to 500 kilotons of TNT. It would be a tremendous device if you want to use it militarily, because it would destroy any army, any city, etc. That wasn't Tesla's goal. He did this by accident. He was just trying to light up the sky so that Perry could discover the North Pole. Okay, but you understand other people had other designs about this death rate. Now, the reason why it's relevant today, because today the U.S. military, the Navy, and the Air Force have what they call the Helios system. That is a ray. It's like a laser beam that can destroy ultrasonic missiles, travels the speed of light. It can destroy anything. That ray, or that laser, the Helios system is what it's called. Interesting. Helios was the sun god of ancient times, but it stands for military jargon. This was the result of Tesla's research. Tesla supposedly died in January 1943 in New York City. The hotel room in which he lived was absconded by the FBI. They went in there, they took all his notes, all his documents. His family was not allowed to get anything. They took it into some laboratory, whatever. And today, 115 years, well, let's see, it would be 57, 78, 80 years later, give or take, 79 years later, or 80 years later, it's the result of the Helios system. This is all Tesla's research. Everything is Tesla's research. And by the way, what's interesting, the man who was assigned from MIT to gather the documents from Tesla's hotel room, his name was John Trump, the uncle of Donald Trump. Art imitating life, as we say.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the Tesla's research. The guy was just brilliant. Everything he did was brilliant. And again, but he's not really that well known unless you do the research for the EVP. But if you do your homework, he's the one who developed it or discovered it. Really what it was, a discovery. And that's what we are.
Was he able to build a working model of this thing to communicate with the dead?
A working model of what now?
Of the machine to communicate with the dead. Was he able to actually get a working model of it?
He had the equivalent of a spirit phone, but it detected the entities, but it wasn't able to communicate back and forth. He could just receive the information and the sound from the thing. So it wasn't the spirit phone, which was supposed to be a two-way communication. And even today, we don't really have two-way communication. Sometimes you can talk to the entities, meaning that you can send an energy out, and sometimes they'll respond, but it's not like you're having a telephone conversation. You can send the energy out, and if they respond fine, mostly they don't respond. So sometimes they will respond to your request, but it's not a very efficient two-way communication. Right.
And how long did it take him to create that?
Well, we don't know the exact thing. In 1901, when he had his experience, he technically already created it with his crystal radio. His radio was receiving signals. Now, he did perfect it as the years went by, so that his more current devices back 20 years later into 1920s and 30s was a little bit more efficient. It's just like comparing a VCR to a DVD or a DVR response, okay? The quality of the signal, or using, say, Skype versus Zoom, or other kinds of video recording. So he increased the quality. The signals were much clearer. And the researchers beyond him, after his death, like I mentioned, Radiev and Gemelli and all these other people, they were able to use his research and develop a little bit more sophisticated equipment. But again, it's on the reception level, not the two-way communication level.
That's absolutely fascinating. And did he base, like you say, he already had the crystal radio built. So was this thing based on the radio, or what was it?
Everything is based on radio communication. So when you think of it, When we have things like television, that comes from radio communication, electromagnetic radiation. The radio, of course, was very big in the 1920s. I believe it was KDKA station in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was the first commercial radio station in 1920 or 21, give or take. And then you actually had television that was developed in the late 20s. It didn't become very popular until the late 40s. Milton Berle, Mr. Television. But we had television in the late 20s. And then in the 30s, they used television to broadcast sport events like boxing matches and World Series, etc. in the 1930s in black and white. I remember that. That's very documented. So basically, all his work came from radio frequencies, electromagnetic radiation. And again, electricity separately from that were his main research, electricity and electromagnetic radiation. And most of his inventions occurred with electricity. Obviously.
When you think about these apps that are out right now, that people use out in the field, they're scanning radio stations at a really high rate of speed. Is that? I mean, I'm trying to wrap my head around this phone. Is that how that worked, where it would scan those frequencies?
Yeah, well, you think of like ham radio and all kinds of various communications. All these are merely receiving, like a person with ham radio. Now, of course, they can communicate too, but they're receiving signals. What about like the SOSs from ships that are having trouble?
Sure.
The Coast Guard, they get their signal. They go back decades ago. So everything is based upon these signals, which are electromagnetic radiation. Now, for people who don't understand this, electromagnetic radiation is the most common form of radiation in the universe. It's harmless. I remember when I was a kid, they used to tell you incorrectly, don't stand in front of a color television set because you'll get cancer. Remember that?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Or don't use cell phones. Put it next to your ear. You're going to get cancer. Right? Wrong.
Right.
Okay. Electromagnetic radiation is harmless. It's absolutely harmless. But that's most radiation in the universe. So basically, most of our technology comes from the development of electromagnetic radiation, whether you're receiving signals or using it to project signals, television, radios, computers, cell phones. So all this is based on, and most of this stuff comes from Tesla. He's the forerunner of all this research.
When I think about the phone, like this phone call from the dead thing, there's a lot of reports like that. Even now, there's people that, somebody dies on a train, and they get a phone call from them later on.
Well, remember a very important principle of science here, because again, I'm focusing on the science too.
Right.
So in science, other than quantum physics, which is the opposite here, even though it's a real science, you want things to be repeatable. You want to develop an experiment with the same parameters so that everybody gets the same results. That's what we do in science. We test whatever we test, drugs, equipment, whatever. It should be repeatable. And for the most part, it is. The exception, of course, is quantum physics, which requires the presence of the observer. But that's a whole different field. All right, so with Tesla, since he developed the EVP, and it wasn't called that in those days, now other scientists and experimenters came up with his approach, and even independently. So now we have independent verification. These weren't just Tesla groupies. These were people that were just doing research with electromagnetic radiation, right? They were doing research with radio signals, etc. Unbeknownst of Tesla, they weren't using Tesla's notes or anything. So they just independently came up with the EVP. Isn't that interesting? That gives a lot of credibility to the phenomena. And again, I gave you a couple of quotes about people contacting their departed loved ones, mother and father, giving them names that nobody else knew about, documentation to this. So again, that just gives what we call suggestive evidence. It doesn't prove anything. You can't prove anything in science these days, but you can give suggestive evidence. The difference here is that the suggestive evidence is overwhelming, overwhelming. Okay, and and people have done this. Like in the old days when they used to do seances, the spiritualist movement, the late 1800s, early 1900s, they would want to contact their spirit, and the way they would test the spirit is to say, well, what happened when I was 6 years old? And, that kind of thing. Only the spirit that was there, the mother, father, whoever, would know that, even though technically a lower astral could read your mind and get that too. But basically, that's how they would test spirits. So with the EVP phenomena, people were doing the same things. They were testing it by relating, getting information from the person they were communicating with about their own personal life that nobody but the person on the other side would know that information. And that gave it corroboration.
It's just fascinating to me that, you know, the timeline this took place in. And I know the man was a genius. So there's no question about that. But even the timeline, like when you think about the Victorian, you know, world, they were into that stuff. They were into spirit communication then.
Well, you know, it's interesting. If you go back, you have to go back. You look at shamanism. Shamanism goes back 50,000 years in Siberia. That's the origin. I don't think it was Tecumseh in Siberia, but in Siberia, that's where shamanism began. And even in the very beginning, they were always interested in contacting spirits. They were using out-of-body experiences to heal the soul. That's what a shaman would do. They were using hypnosis and out-of-body experiences for that. Throughout history, go back to the mystery schools of ancient Greece, Egypt, Rome, Persia, China. They all use these techniques to contact departed loved ones. There's a technique that I developed called conscious dying, which goes way back in time. It's nothing but a westernization of the old mystery school techniques. In Book 10 of the Republic, Plato, he ends the Book 10 with the statement, practice dying. What he meant by that is connecting to your higher self to raise your frequency, vibrational rate of your soul so you can avoid the karmic cycle. Because obviously he was a great believer in reincarnation, as am I. So my point is that it's not a coincidence. We've always had obsessions, literally, with connecting with spirits on the other side. And I think the main reason for that was not just for personal growth, but overcoming bereavement and being able to contact an entity that was close to you that you missed because they clinically died. And that was one of the main reasons for all these seances and all the other stuff. But it goes back thousands of years. You know, it passes the test of time. It's not a coincidence that people have been doing this 5,000, 10,000 years ago, maybe 50,000 years ago with shamanism. So, you know, it's something that is, again, a gift to us from the universe for us to grow spiritually, which is everything that I represent.
Well, I mean, even in the work that I do, you know, I see it all the time. So even in my own life, you know, your family members pass away, you want to figure out if they're still here, if you can contact them. So, I mean, yeah, like you say,
let me tell you what's the problem with cognitive versus experiential. So you have a conversation with someone who lost a relative, a friend, a relative, let's say a relative. And you can go over the principles of conscious dying. You can go over the different dimensions. You can let them know that death is nothing but a change of dimensions. That's all fine. And let's assume that they're intelligent enough to listen to you and maybe do a little reading and understand everything you say. That is not going to stop their bereavement. They're still going to bereave. But if they have the experience contacting with the spirit on the other side, you can train people to do that. I call that conscious dying techniques. Now that's a different ballgame. When I do that with people, the bereavement all of a sudden disappears. Because now they realize not just me telling them and saying things, but they now have evidence that their departed loved one still has a life. It may be in a different dimension, but it's not like they're in a black hole for eternity or they vaporized. No, they actually have a life in a different dimension. And that really is one way to cure bereavement. And that's what I think is the reason why these techniques have been so popular. And EVP was the first real scientific way of documenting this, rather than just the experiential part.
How does somebody conscious die?
Again, your microphone is kind of hard to understand.
How does somebody go through the process of conscious dying?
Oh, okay. Basically, what you do is I use hypnosis. There's a program I have called if they go to my homepage and my website, I have an album. They can get this in CDs or MP3s called the Conscious Dying Training Program. What you're doing is you're connecting with your higher self. And your higher self is going to connect with the higher self of the departed soul. And then you'll be able to communicate, get that soul to go into the white light, so to speak, if they're on the lower astral plane, where most people go when they die, almost everyone does, to go to the upper astral plane. So now they're no longer going to be harassed, and now they can communicate, and you can help them grow spiritually enough so that they can go on and reincarnate into the next life, rather than being harassed on the lower astral plane for decades and decades of time, at least by our standards. So that's called conscious dying. You're helping them to enter into the white light, the tunnel, white light, etc., go to the upper astral plane where now they can communicate directly with their higher self. Because there is no communication with your higher self, the perfect part of your soul, on the lower astral. You have to go to the upper astral for that. So that's why we call it conscious dying.
How many astral planes are there?
Again, I'm having a problem understanding it.
Okay. How many astral planes are there? Because you talked about, there's lower ones and there's upper ones. So how many are there?
Are you asking for the number of dimensions out there?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's basically, in my paradigm, there are 13 dimensions. You have 5 that represent the karmic cycle, the earth plane, the astral plane, the causal, the mental, the etheric. Then the soul plane is the 6th plane, which is sort of like a DMZ. It's where you go after you cross into spirit on these lives, and then you choose your next life. Or if you perfect your karmic cycle and your soul's energy, you get rid of all the karma, then you can ascend into the 7 higher planes, which takes you into the God energy complex. So there's 13 altogether, which, by the way, the Mayans have 13 too. The East Indians have 7 dimensions. So they're different, but it doesn't matter. Tomatoes, tomatoes. The point is you want to get rid of the karmic cycle, perfect the soul, and then rejoin the God energy complex.
Okay, cool. What's next for you, sir?
Well, I continue with my work. I do, by the way, for the benefits of your audience, I do a monthly webinar the 2nd Sunday of the month. My next one will be August 13th. I'll be doing one on forbidden archaeology. So I do a whole bunch of different topics. If they go to my homepage and they click on the webinar graphic there, or the link, it will take you to a site that has all my past webinars. I've done like 35 of them, and I do them every month now. And they can, even though they're not live now, they're recorded, they can order any past workshop, webinar. I do time travelers, psychic self-defense, slowing down the aging process, regression, progression, all the different metaphysical topics that I deal with. So they can do that live on the 2nd Sunday of the month, or if they're interested in past ones, they can order any of the ones that are recorded on MP3 files.
Fantastic. Dr. Goldberg, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it so much. It's always great to talk to you. It's absolutely fascinating.
Pleasure. It's always a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope your audience learned something if they access my my website, which I hope is linked to your thing. There's articles on there, exercises, videos. I've done like 55 videos on there, including the regression of the late Jerry Springer. That's on there too. So there's a lot of fun stuff on there, and of course all my books and CDs. And my practice is all mostly done by Zoom. So if they want to see me but they don't want to come to Los Angeles, we could do everything by computer. So I want to thank you again and wish you the best too.
All right. Well, I'd love to get you back on a later date to talk more about this stuff.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye.
All right. You too. Have a good one. All right. I always learn so much when he's on. Wow. Tomorrow, again, we're going to be primarily on Facebook and TikTok. So I'll be sending out links for that for anybody that came over here to watch from YouTube and the California Haunts. I'm tired tonight. And the California Haunts meetup. I'll be sending out links for the show for over here at Facebook. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming. It's been a confusing day, a very confusing day, and I see my internet. Must have been some big news today. It looks like my internet is popping in and out too today. So if anything can go wrong, it will, just like the beginning of the show. Anyway, tomorrow, Peter Sterling is going to be with us. Mr. Sterling is a musician, but he moved to Sedona, Arizona a few years back, and in so doing, he would go out and meditate, in Sedona, because that's what people do in Sedona. But he was contacted by angels, and the angels told him that he should learn to play the harp. So he bought this harp, and he tells me that, or he claims, he claims that the angels taught him how to play the harp, and so now what his focus is on is playing angelic music to help people, with their problems and stuff. So he's going to be joining us tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, right here on Facebook and TikTok. All right. So without further ado, I just want to make one quick announcement. Sunday's event for seeing places, easy places to access for ghost hunts and all that got moved to Thursday. Had some issues with the computer, And then Saturday, I am teaching a ghost hunting 101 class. I'm in the process of recruiting new members for my team. And if it sounds like something you would like to do, it's an intense 2.5-hour class. You take that class, and if it seems like something you want to do, then you come out and have dinner with some of my team members, and we get to know you, and take that step, and then there will be a investigation step behind that to see how well you mesh with everybody, and then we can all go from there and get you put on this team. If everybody agrees to. So that's going to be Saturday at 6 p.m. Pacific. Okay, you got to go over to the California Haunts Me page to sign up under events for that. So it's great. I've got 6 spots left open. God, today's one of those days. I got 6 spots left open for that. And so, those spots tend to fill fast. So if you're interested in becoming a California Haunts Paranormal Investigation team member, that's the place to go. All right, that's the first step. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, including Dr. Bruce Goldberg. I will see you tomorrow, and we will be watching Peter Sterling. And I'm going to give you Dr. Goldberg's information. Here we go. Website, drbrucegoldberg.com, all lowercase. He's got lots of books, but we just focused on Time Travelers from Our Future, Egypt, Soul Healing, and Exploring the Fifth Dimension. See, lucked out with that one because that's what we were talking about tonight. And you can, of course, get those books at Amazon, and I believe you can get them just as well as his website. Yeah, I've been on his website. It's a cool website, so you guys should just check it out, okay? Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Have a great evening, and enjoy.